Barely a week goes by, in fact, barely a day seems to go by these days without another scandal about data and privacy. There have been scandals about Google+, Path, and of course Facebook. And one author who has put her finger, I think, on what has gone wrong with social networks is the legal scholar and author Laurie Andrews. Laurie has just authored a very controversial book called I Know Who You Are and I Saw What You Did. Laurie, welcome to TechCrunch TV.
Thanks, and I know you like those noir movies, so the title works for you.
I Know Who You Are and I Saw What You Did. And then, of course, the subtitle is Social Networks and the Death of Privacy. So let me start you off, Laurie, with an easy one. Are social networks leading to the death of privacy?
Absolutely, because increasingly your online self is more important than your offline self. So we have now 75% of companies say that they require their HR officials to search people's social network pages before offering them jobs. Just yesterday it was announced that college scholarships are now being withheld if the sponsor finds anything on your social network page. And it was also announced that college athletes are required to friend the coaches now, and whole business models have developed where they have early warning systems if one of your athletes ever shows up with a red cup in their hand. So here we have social networks which are supposed to expand our possibilities, really narrowing behavior.
But Laurie, a lot of people would say, well, you don't have to be on a social network. I'm not on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, but I'm not on many of the others. Isn't it our choice to reveal our data and to live more publicly? And if we choose to do that, what's wrong with it?
Well, we don't understand what those choices actually mean. So in one case, a woman was injured on the job and she needed 10 spinal surgeries, had pins put in her back. And what happened was the judge in the case, when she sued, took a look at a smiling photo of her on Facebook and said, oh, you can't possibly be injured because you're smiling. And so who would think that a smiling picture would come back to haunt them? Or some young individuals are being charged with gang membership because they're wearing gang colors. Well, I looked up the LAPD list of gang colors. They're plaid, think any hipster, or all black, think New York art opening. And so you can't consciously make a decision because these things are taken out of context. Plus, it isn't what you post, but what's collected about you. I think the real issue is the data aggregators, companies like Axiom that have 1,500 bits of information on 96% of Americans, or Google scanning my emails I send over Gmail, keeping track of my web searches. They announced that they track location even when you've turned your GPS off on your Droid phone. That's the sort of information that might be used against me. You know, if I look for guitars in a Google search, and it happens that guitar players are less likely to pay off their credit card bills, then even though I'm an above board law professor, if I go to a credit card site to get a credit card, I will actually be offered something with lower credit possibilities because I'm now lumped into a category of guitar players.
Laurie, last November, Sheryl Sandberg, the chief operating officer of Facebook, wrote a piece in The Economist. She said that networks like Facebook are good because they allow us finally to reveal, to communicate what she called our authentic personalities. Is she right?
No, absolutely wrong. So the digital self, the Google search that I do for weapons, say, might actually be something I'm doing because of my mystery writing. And so it seems to reveal something about me that isn't exactly true. With respect to Facebook, one's authentic self might change over time. And if you have timeline where you're in a relationship with some other person, plus...
Well, but Laurie, just to jump in here, Mark Zuckerberg famously said that we only have one identity. Is he wrong?
He's totally wrong because, part of the importance of privacy individually to development is the slow reveal. People bond and get to know each other. You can't possibly be friends with 500 people. Is it a friend if they won't come and help me move my piano up to a fourth floor apartment? And so we're getting a distorted idea about friendship, but also revelations have huge consequences that Sandberg and Zuckerberg never figure in.
Why don't they? Is it just that they're purely self-interested, or they don't understand what's really happening?
Don't understand. Certainly, I don't think Mark Zuckerberg understands.
But Sheryl Sandberg is a grown-up. She gets it, doesn't she?
Yes, and I think that that's not the business model in terms of what they're in. So let's take the fact that Facebook originally got all these members by promising that it would only reveal information to the people you designate. Then, without notice, in 2009, it changed, and all of a sudden your friends' pictures and names became public. So American critics of the Iranian government, some had friends or relatives in Iran, and so when that authentic self of their friends and relatives was revealed, those relatives were beat up, were put in jail in Tehran, and so forth. So what Facebook does has huge physical, financial, emotional consequences, and decisions to reveal more aren't necessarily in the best interest of the people involved.
So what you're saying then is that Facebook is a kind of dream almost. It could have been made up by a secret policeman in Tehran or Moscow or Beijing.
Yes, I think that's important to know. I love security analyst Richard Powers' idea that, think about getting the most intimate information about nearly 1 billion people like Facebook has. People's sexual orientations, their political beliefs, where they are in any given moment of the day. If the government tried to do that, it would take money, it would take lawyers, it might even take guns, was his concept. And yet we turn this over readily. Google searches, Gmail, GPS, we wouldn't give that information to the government, yet 93% of the time when the government asks Google, they cough up that information about individuals. So essentially, Facebook, Google are serving as intermediaries for the government.
So Laura, you teach, your day job, you teach law in Chicago, but today you have ventured into Silicon Valley. You have a large audience of entrepreneurs out there, many of whom are pioneering social media businesses, social businesses in education, in many other spheres of the economy. What would you say to them?
I would say much of the business model is based on deception. People don't realize this is going on. In fact, there was one survey of consumers where one person responded by saying, this data aggregation stuff sounds like something a paranoid friend of mine has made up. But the increasing revelations just in the past week where it was noted that Angry Birds keeps your location and who you've called, as each of these things has come out, more and more people have been demanding privacy. So I would say I'd love to see some of the entrepreneurs get involved in more privacy-enhancing technologies, because I think the pendulum is swinging.
Well, where have you seen any, I mean, we know your criticism, and I think your book is an essential read in terms of understanding more critically what's going on, but have you seen any evidence of positive developments? Google, for example, the Google Plus Circles, for example, is much more concerned with privacy than, say, Facebook Timeline. Isn't that fair?
It is, yes, absolutely true. But Google has a certain amount of Facebook envy, and so we've seen them trip before. I mean, think about Google Buzz, where without adequately informing people, they set up a social network which was populated then by the people that you most frequently emailed. And it turned out people then who clicked on check out Google Buzz found that the people they most frequently emailed, who may be their psychiatrist or their stalker ex-husband, all of a sudden had access to information about them and became their friends in their social network. In fact, one businessman most emailed his customers. The small businessman, then the customers' pictures and names came up, and those were plucked off by competitors. So, I think Google's learned from things like that, but I think we're seeing some other mishaps with the combining across Google platforms. So if I email a divorce lawyer and then I Google search for something about depression, I could be watching a YouTube video with my son and ads will come up related to that. We did have that big disaster in 2010 where Google admitted that when young people search for actually said on Google suicide chat rooms, I'm thinking of committing suicide with X Chemical. Ads would come up, 2 for 1, buy X Chemical now, 1-800. So
I shouldn't be laughing.
it's so
It's so
there's
awful,
a bit
it's
of
funny.
social engineering in all of this in terms of, I don't think it's our authentic self, because it's moving toward the self that the algorithms or data aggregators think we should be.
What about startups like Path? Path was involved in a controversy about allowing, about reading the address books of its users. But Path, startups like Path are very much more focused on more private social networks. Are you in any way positive about them?
I think we're going to see some alternatives that are more peer-to-peer, less large servers, having people have options in this area. I don't think, but I also think we're going to see some regulation, because right now a company like Google has so much power, and I live in Chicago. The mayor is closing libraries on Mondays. School kids are Googling or needing access to Wikipedia to even do their schoolwork. And so I don't think we're going to just say that the companies can have terms of service that are take it or leave it. We're going to see regulation. But I also am hopeful that we'll see some innovative alternatives.
Do not track? Do you believe in that?
Well, the do not track, which is the industry's perspective, I find ludicrous, because it really should say do not freak me out. Since it still allows them to track, it just limits the amount of very specific information, so that if I search for a divorce lawyer, it doesn't freak me out by saying, here are 10 divorce lawyers you should know in ads. So right now it's opt out for tracking. So I've written 14 books. I love dictionary.com. It puts 233 cookies on my computer. And I have to figure out each of those 233 companies and ask them to take me off their tracking in the current situation. So for me, it's like going home from work. 233 strangers are in my apartment. I have to individually ask them one by one. I think we should have opt-in, but not through a terms of service that nobody reads. I think if I want to get ads from Urban Outfitters or my favorite band, I should have to go someplace else to opt-in. It shouldn't be part of my dealings with the social network or the website.
Laurie, final question very briefly. How much further can this social technology go? Now we have in vogue real-time networks like Glancy, which allow people to know when their friends are in the same location. At what point will we hit a wall?
I think anything we imagine can come to pass. We've already got things where certain programs allow remote activation of your microphone, and so without knowing of it, you're giving data up about do you eat alone or in a restaurant? Are you sleeping with someone of the same sex or the opposite sex? So people seem to unwittingly have given up privacy, and I think companies will just reach for more and more and more. There's an attempt now to say if I buy something at a fast food restaurant, I would immediately get a coupon for a health club. So I think that we are moving toward being manipulated, and I think that the only thing that's going to happen is people are going to get upset enough to push back. I think the technology would be, as you point out in your new book, the panopticon, being under surveillance all the time.
Well, on that eerie, creepy note, Laurie Andrews, the author of I Know Who You Are and I Saw What You Did, thank you so much for appearing on TechCrunch TV, and I won't ask where you're going next. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much.